Greetings. Once every 100,000 years or so, something comes along that redefines the very fibre of dance music and causes us to question what we think we know. And for a brief moment, back in 1994, that instrument was. So, the Grid were formed back in 1988 and consisted of Dave Wall and Richard Norris. Richard Norris was a producer as well as a writer for The Enemy, whilst Dave Wall was half of 80s synth legend Soft Cell and is the chap miming along with the Moog and the Pollard Syndrome with Mark Almond on top of the pops. For Swamp Thing, they hired a session musician by the name of Roger Dinsdale and asked him to play some banjo. There'll be a lot more of that later. But first, let's do the basics. All of these I've lazily lifted from Elab's Ecstatic Goldmine since it's somewhat period correct. So, mostly 909s and a few sort of acoustic-y drum samples. You've heard all of this before on every track from the early 90s. Next up, there are two vocal samples from a terribly rude track called Papa Do It Sweet by a Jamaican duo called Lloyd and Patsy.
But tell me something, you live same place?
Yes.
Well, alright, watch out. Well, alright, watch out.
Man, I'm not getting no sweet wine, so I gotta smoke a spliff and get real cool till you come.
Scene, alright. Scene, alright.
So this guitar stab was one of those samples that was seemingly everywhere. I've sampled it from CNC Music Factory. But there's something vaguely similar on the venerable JV 1080. Now there's one other non-banjo sample I'm using, and that's this resonant synth sound. It's not really right, but whatever. So, synthesizer time. Here's the bass. And to me, it sounds a bit like a square wave with some slow PWM, so let's try that. That's too fast. Here's the part in context. And again, it's one of those sounds that was all over the place back in the day, up there with lately bass. Synth 2 is a generic pad. It's just some saw waves with some slow attack and release and some unison mode going on. There's probably something way more complex than that, but that's how I've done it here. And all of this I'm doing on the Nord because I don't really have a huge synth collection, so there we go. So synth 3 is a lot more resonant and is only used briefly, so we'll rack the resonance up and assign an LFO to it, so it sounds like it's moving around a bit. Synth 4 is one of those laser zaps, so we just whack the resonance up, make some zappy sounds. Sounds great. Synth 5, I'm going to go with an SH101, and it's just an 8-note loop. Sounds a bit like this. With some portamento on top of it. So this time I'm sequencing everything on this, the mighty Squarp Hapax. I'm borrowing this for a while because it's an awful lot easier to sequence on this than on the MC50, which is featured prominently in my other videos. And also it's great to be able to show you guys all the parts laid out with a nice big grid-like display. So that basically. So I've put the sort of ghosty drum part on track 1, and that's sort of what you're seeing at the moment. And I've also got that resonant sample that's playing. I think the original's a bit more atonal, but whatever. Part 2's got the 909 on, which sounds like every early 90s dance track. And track 3's got the snare on it, so I can basically put the snare rolls in different places. Part 5 has got the vocal.
Well, alright, watch out.
And if you find a place where it's going to happen, part 6 has got the guitar on it. And then if you find the right place, all the synths are on tracks 9 through 12. So that's these ones. So I've got the channel or the program change on one of these as well. So the let's just turn that down a bit in case the copyright police get hold of it. So it's kind of simple stuff up to this point. So the banjo part, from what I've understood, was written by Roger Dinsdale. It was a folk musician that one of the members of the Grid's team saw playing in a bar. He was brought in as a session musician and jammed a bunch of things that could be sampled and reused, and a lot of that ended up here on Swamp Thing. So controversially, I don't think Roger actually played it in the track's final key of A. If you drop the whole thing down a tone, you end up with it not only being in the more banjo-friendly tuning of G, but also it makes everything 120 beats a minute, which, as we all know, is every producer's favourite tempo. In all the clips, Roger even plays it without a capo, which I don't know what's going on there, but I don't think Dave Ball's playing that Oberheim voice either. So, based on interviews from the time, it sounds like Dave and Richard chopped up Roger's banjo playing on a sampler, so I've tried to do the same. I've kind of got 9 phrases in total that I've attempted to play. Roger really was an absolute monster on the banjo, so I hope I've done it some form of justice. So, laid out on the Hapax. If we play all that back, and then turn the pitch up from G to A, add some delay, and we aren't a million miles away from the finished thing. So if you want to watch the whole video, click the link above. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.